Well, good morning. Thank you. I am grateful to be here today. As Victor said, I am the social media and website manager for TBC, and I've been a practitioner of Buddhism for about 15 years. Those of you that have heard me speak before know that I'm a storyteller, and today will be no different, so buckle up. Before I get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about this photo behind me. This is my friend Sarah and me on our very first orienteering adventure. Orienteering is kind of a cross between hiking and trail running and a scavenger hunt. And this, every time it pops up on my Facebook memories, it reminds me not to take myself too seriously. Because you can see I am fighting for my life in that ravine. And Sarah is standing there just smiling and beautiful. And it's funny because the club that we were doing this orienteering with used this photo in all of their event promotions and their advertising for 2 years. The thing that I'm going to talk about today is beginner's mind, and that involves being curious and trying new things. And I am forever grateful to Sarah for always pushing me to do things that are out of my comfort zone. So anyway, let's dive in. When I was a little girl in the 1970s, or as my kids like to say, the mid-1900s, I did not care much for girl things, and this was before we stopped assigning activities to certain genders. I didn't much care for dolls or playing house or librarian, which is something the other girls in my neighborhood liked to do. They'd get books and sit behind a play desk and then check out books to each other. And some of you might find this really entertaining. You might even be a librarian, but I just wanted to play in the dirt. I like to climb trees. I like to play with cars. I preferred playing kickball in the streets or riding my bike in the storm sewers to doing any of the things that the other girls on my block wanted to do. And my mother, bless her heart, tried to change me. She bought me Barbie dolls and babies in an effort to make me more feminine. It didn't work. I put those dolls and Barbies in the front of my bike and rode down to my elementary school where there were lots of walnut trees, and I would launch those Barbies into the trees to try to get the nuts to come down. And I come home with my hands just black and sticky from that substance that's all over the black walnuts. If you see squirrels around and they've got little black paws, that's because they've been eating those same walnuts. And another attempt to get me to want to play house, my parents built a really nice playhouse in my backyard. It had a door that swung open and windows and a play kitchen inside of it. And they built it in the corner right next to our chain link fence. So naturally, I climbed the fence and jumped over to the roof where I would sit for hours and hours just reading or writing stories. I don't ever remember playing inside of the house, but I would seek refuge there if it was raining and I wanted to go outside and not get drenched. And sometimes I would drag blankets out there and sleep in it. And then one day, when I was about 11, my mother enrolled me in charm school, which is a thing that used to exist. And it taught young girls how to be feminine and have good manners. The woman who taught it used to be a model, so she taught us how to walk in heels and wear makeup and use the right fork at a formal dinner. And after I graduated from charm school, my mother figured out a way to get me to start modeling for local stores, doing runway shows, and even standing in windows being a mannequin. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, here I was, wanting to play sports and ride my bike and climb trees, and here I was wearing a power suit and walking down a runway at 11 or 12 years old. It was ridiculous. And to be clear, I don't begrudge my mother for any of this. She was doing what she thought was best with the information that she had. But as a result of that, my love of nature and being outdoors was squashed. And it stayed dormant in me for about 20 years. So when my kids were little, they're now 19 and 22, and we went for a hike near our home. And I watched my kids experience the joy and the wonder of the outdoors. And I remember one time after we had removed our shoes and we were walking through this muddy creek, and I said, My mother never would have done this with me. And my daughter turned to me and she said, I wish you had had you for a mom. And it was not long after that that we started making regular trips to various hiking trails. They'd climb the trees and chase the squirrels. And about 12 years ago, I bought my first pair of hiking boots. You're probably wondering what any of this has to do with Buddhism. Well, I'm about to tell you. In Zen, there's something called beginner's mind. And it doesn't mean that you're just starting out in Zen, although it can. In Zen, it's called Shoshan, and it's a concept that refers to having an attitude of openness, eagerness, a lack of preconception, just as a beginner would. In sociology, beginner's mind is an open mind, an unbiased mind, a curious and welcoming mind. But it's not just a cognitive perspective, it's an experiential way of being in the world. To have childlike wonder, where everything is a miracle. And we apply the same principle at every service here when we say, may we go forth in innocence, guided by the wisdom of our hearts. When we were children, before we were told what to be or assigned labels, we knew who we were. We knew what we liked and what we didn't like. We were always in the moment, unaware of what day it was or time it was, except that maybe our tummy rumbled, so we knew we were hungry and it must be close to dinner time. We slept when we were tired. We ate when we were hungry. We were masters of Zen. And then somewhere in our journey of growing up, we stopped. We were conditioned into thinking that there are right ways and wrong ways. We were told how to behave. We accepted the expectations of others and we lived by them. We were told that time is a thing that exists and we have to abide by it. I remember in high school when classes were so precisely timed that a class would begin at 10:19 and end at 11:12, and the next one would start exactly 6 minutes later. Victor knows all about this. We were trained to constantly watch the clock and ignore our natural rhythms. In my family, my father came home at 6:30 in the evening every night. He came up the stairs from the garage, my mother handed him a drink, he went upstairs to shower and change clothes, and at precisely 7 p.m. every night, we sat down to eat dinner. Fast forward to my first year in college, and my best friend and I were at my apartment. It was about 5 o'clock, and I said to him, I'm hungry, but it's not dinner time yet. I can't eat dinner for 2 more hours. I'm gonna have a snack. And when I tell you that that man looked at me like I had 3 heads, he literally cocked his head and he said, you do know that you can eat dinner anytime you're hungry. If it's 5 o'clock and you're hungry, you can eat dinner. No, it hadn't occurred to me, because in my family, we ate dinner at 7 o'clock, not 6:40, or not 6:45, not 5:15, 7 o'clock. How many things do we do in our lives just because someone at some point conditioned us to believe that that was the only way to do it? How many preconceptions do we have about what's right and wrong? We walk mindlessly through our lives doing things the way that we've always done them without regard to what our needs are, without regard to what our nature requires us to thrive. We think we know how things are supposed to be, but that's a trick that our mind plays on us. There is no supposed to. There is no good, bad, right, or wrong. And we need to ask ourselves, where has our desire for comfort and security cost us our aliveness? So how do we get back to that openness and eagerness to learn and live our true nature? Well, we start by casting away our expectations. As I mentioned, the expectation on me was that I would be more like my sister. I would wear feminine clothing, I would speak softly, and I certainly would not borrow my mother's pie plates and go out to the garden and fill them with mud and rocks and dirt and make mud pies. My sister would never, but I did. And when I think about why I stopped playing in the dirt and playing kickball in the street with the boys, it was because of an expectation that was placed on me. Buying my first pair of hiking boots was just the beginning of that deconstruction of expectations that I had been living under the weight of for a very long time, and I wasn't even aware of it. What expectations have been placed on you that you are living under the weight of? And what can you cast away to get closer to who you really are at your core? And what expectations do you have of others that might be preventing them from living their truest and highest self? We have got to open our hearts and our minds to all possibilities, because all possibilities exist. And if you believe in multiverse theory, there are an infinite number of you living every possible life. So who's to say what's right? All possibilities exist, even here on Earth. I saw a screenshot on social media recently that was shared by a couple of my friends, and it said, I had a French professor who once said that if you just did something like going to the supermarket and experienced it fully without the goggles of habit and categories, you would go crazy with pure joy. And someone responded, the best thing I ever did for myself was start treating the world like I'm a benevolent alien. Everything is so beautiful, and people are so cool, and food is delicious, and helping people is so much fun. You can live so vibrantly. Benevolent aliens with beginners' minds. This has come alive for me most recently because we adopted a kitten. Aww. My daughter worked on an organic farm over the summer. Like, talk about playing in the dirt, right? And where there are farms, there are cats. And this particular kitten was the runt of the litter. And every day at lunch, he would follow her to the picnic table where she ate, and she would feed him little bits of cheese or lunch meat, anything that an obligate carnivore would like. And eventually, this kitten came home with her in a potato crate. And we named him Indiana Jones. We named him that because he's so adventurous, although I've said recently we should have named him Roy Kent because he's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Those of you that know Ted Lasso. Yeah. But what I've noticed, and this may seem really obvious to a lot of you, what I've noticed is that everything's new to Indy. He'd never seen the inside of a house, or stairs, or a bed. Side note, he became a big fan of my bed really early on. I have watched him discover all sorts of new things. Windows, cat food, not just bits of cheese or the occasional mouse that he managed to hunt and catch. And this has opened my own eyes to the things that I take for granted. Indy knows the sound of a plate clinking as I take it out of the cupboard, and he comes running because he knows the next thing that's going to happen is that I'm going to open a can of food for him. He'd never seen a shower curtain, heard fireworks, looked out a window, all of these things that are so normal to us, he's rediscovering. Or he's discovering, and I'm rediscovering them. And I'm rediscovering what it was like for me as a very young child to see everything with fresh eyes for the very first time. When we are open to all possibilities, we allow ourselves to drop our ego, to drop our expectations. One of the things I have always told my children is that you are not always the smartest person in the room, and you are not always right. And you can't learn anything if you already think you know everything. Beginner's mind tells us, I know nothing. I'm eager to learn. I have no expectations. I have no judgments. And I will watch my life unfold as it unfolds. I won't try to predict what's going to happen or how someone will respond. And that's a really big one for me because I have a habit of examining all the possible responses and reactions and being prepared for every single one of them. And you know what happens? None of those things. None of them. So what was it worth? What was the point of ruminating and causing myself all of that anxiety? Our ego wants us to be in charge, but we're not. There's too many variables. And why do we want to be in charge anyway? Like when we were children, we didn't try to make things happen. Things just happened and we adapted. Tommy's bike has a flat tire, we'll walk. Candy store is closed, we'll just raid the pantry for cookies. If you suspend your voice of judgment, you open up a new space for inquiry and wonder. Have you ever really looked at produce in the grocery store? Like really looked at it like a benevolent alien? When I worked at the Overland Park Arboretum, one day we were sorting seeds because they grow a lot of their own plants. And there's a wide variety of plants there, including some vegetables and some beans. And I noticed how bean seeds look like beans. Corn seeds are literally corn. Sunflower seeds grow sunflowers. Do you know how incredible this is? You plant a seed, and it grows into a plant, and it makes more seeds that we can eat, and then grow more. This is incredible, like truly incredible. One little seed can grow hundreds of things for us to eat. If we cultivate a beginner's mind, we can cultivate the capacity to appreciate and to love. We can let go of our old identities, intentions, expectations, flowing with the river and not trying to steer it in any one particular direction. We can tune into our soul and our consciousness that's begging us to remember our true self, to go back to that first seed that was planted in us when we knew what our passions were, to live openly, eagerly, and without expectation. I want to leave you this morning with a poem written by Mary Oliver titled Mindful. Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. Oh, good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass. As we go forth from this place, may we enter each moment in innocence, guided by the wisdom of our hearts. Thank you for sharing your practice with me.